Hi folks, it's Thinking Slow here. So we have another follow-up video on bots, which hopefully you'll find quite interesting. The title is Who is James Melville, but we're going to look at some specifics of his account and what goes on there. But the point of this is not a sort of hate session against an individual, it's to show, again, what we're always asking is who is running these bots and what kind of people and messages they're trying to push on us, because that really is the key question. The ins and outs of individuals are not so important, but this has been, I think, a useful case because we can really show you now a little bit more detail on how all of this stuff works, but at the same time retaining the big picture of why this is all really, really important. You must understand, or we must try and understand at least, the psyop behind this whole operation. As we've said before, that this is not done by accident. This whole bot traffic is deliberately created, and it's created for a purpose. So let's look at that. And before we get into that, firstly, great news. If you saw the Delling poll podcast, then that's generated a lot more really high quality volunteers for the organisation, and I'm very, very excited about the skill set that those people bring. It really is pretty impressive. I mean, very impressive. And hopefully that'll give us more traction now in the political area, which is what we're trying to do and get away from Twitter. But we have all the ingredients now, and fingers crossed we can get some real traction for liberty there and get away from social media, which is pointless. And as we always say, we have this Patreon page. We're not here for the money. The money is very, very uninspiring, and we've invested huge amounts of time in this. So this is not a money-making venture, but financial support's always appreciated because it's a sign that people understand the extent of the work and the effort that goes into a lot of these videos and explanations. So it takes a couple of minutes to sign up. So if you want to support us, however small really, just put this on pause and take the 2 or 3 minutes to sign up on the Patreon page. So, okay, getting straight in then, let's look at the meat and potatoes of what we're doing here today. So let's start then. I'm going to look at sort of 3 sections: the liberty qualifications of Mr. Melville. I'm going to look at the bot traffic, which I can give you a bit of a spoiler is almost all fake. And also just wrapping up, as I said at the end, with what this really means, who is behind these individuals and these agendas, and what are they trying to do or get us to do, because that's really what we need to figure out. I think, as time goes on, we understand the importance of applied psychology, and we're being nudged and pushed all the time somewhere, and it's important to work out where that somewhere is, and in most cases not go to that somewhere because it's bad for us. So let's start with the qualifications of a libertarian then. So this is something that comes up a lot now. Mr. Melville does many dozens of tweets a day. He's on a very high weekly tweet output, and it's difficult to keep up with them all, but there's quite often, this has come out quite recently. This is one, for example, advertising the case of Sweden and this inconvenient truth for some people. So some people implies that there were others who were against Sweden, and of course he wasn't one of them, because they are some people, i.e. not him. But that, this kind of message gets repeated over and over, that I was there, I was warning, I was against lockdown, etc., etc. So, let's have a look at who these some people are. And lo and behold, we find Mr. Melville himself, writing in the Byline Times, calling Sweden's response to COVID catastrophic failure. Now, the explanation will be given that facts change, therefore opinions change, which is fine, but the real issue is this is not about changing opinions. This is about setting yourself up now as a champion of the approach to Sweden and proving that all those naysayers were wrong. Well, you are one of the naysayers, so this idea that it was some people, i.e. not the person writing that, is a fiction. Some people includes the person making that comment. And that goes on over and over again. This is an issue of setting yourself up as a libertarian with libertarian credentials being opposed to the Great Reset, supporting Sweden, being anti-lockdown, when none of that is true. He was some people. So let's look at the next one then, and that feeds in exactly to lockdown. Again, here we go again with us. Many of us, who's us, have been warning about lockdown. So again, you're making the presentation that there was some bad people somewhere that were pro-lockdown, but we, us, were actually warned that lockdown was bad and dangerous. So, and then let's look at the reality. So here is the first one where Mr. Melville is actually calling for the UK to adopt the crazy zero COVID policy of New Zealand. And he advertises that they nipped it in the bud, the clarion call for the Ice Age and the zero COVID lunatics. So, again, where's us? Who's us? Us actually there is an us, but he's not one of us. He was actually lobbying for New Zealand-style lockdowns. And again, this is not a question of facts changing. This is reinventing yourself dishonestly as a champion of liberty when you were the exact opposite. And again, it goes on here, Wigan has performed very badly, but Australia and New Zealand have done very well. I get thousands and thousands of likes, that's another story. And then also writing in Al Jazeera, had a short spell there, really that the UK didn't lock down early enough. So you've got actually this guy advocating zero COVID, mega hard lockdowns and lockdown early. That's the reality. To turn up in September 2022 and say we were warning about these things is a complete fabrication, total fabrication. We get into a similar thing with the Great Reset. So many other tweets are around, how evil the oligarchy is. They're stealing assets, and then of course you go back. This is just a small sample of the number of World Economic Forum position papers this guy retweeted over years. I mean, here it is, that's him, these are the World Economic Forum papers, and these are just the direct circulation of World Economic Forum material. There's also a whole bunch, which I'm not going to bore you with, of indirect circulation of World Economic Forum material, including on the Great Reset. So again, this is not a question of changing your mind. This is now reinventing yourself. You're now reinventing yourself in September 2022 as being against this evil oligarchy in Davos and the World Economic Forum, having spent years circulating their propaganda. Absolutely not credible. So that was the bit about the qualifications for being a libertarian spokesman and hero. Let's look now at Twitter, and I'm not going to go through all the material again because we've done it on other videos, but as we said before, Twitter has a massive bot problem. And, we quoted this study, which is one study from Cambridge that you can look up. 54% of traffic is generated by bots. Our number is much, much higher because we're talking about politics, and there it's well over 80%. I mean, we stuck our necks out with 80, but it's becoming higher and higher, that estimate, the more we look at the traffic figures. So let's now have a look at the social media presence of James Melville. So here is one that just came out yesterday, and this is an all-time classic. This shows a classic approach, which is pure plagiarism. So this is a tweet which is an exact copy, literally word for word, of a tweet that was made in 5 previous occasions by other users. And looking at the dates of this, I'm assuming the genuine first person to tweet this was on the 20th of August. Connor Swaffer was his name, and that generated 5 likes. And then this exact text and this exact photo were plagiarized a few times during August. So we're talking now a month ago, so it got 5 likes, no likes, 13 likes, no likes, no likes over the past month as it was plagiarized and sent out. Then James Melville takes exactly the same text and exactly the same photo, tweets it out. Lo and behold, this was yesterday, which was 8,500 likes compared to 5, 0, 13, 0, 0. all of a sudden, this exact same content now is worthy of 8,500 likes, which is now up to 11,000. And that's another actually indicator of bots, is this volume just keeps clicking up all the time, days after you've actually done a tweet. So most of us know if we do a tweet, then we'll get some reaction within a day, 2 days, but you're not there days later seeing thousands and thousands of likes being added. So not only is the number completely unrealistic if you compare this history, but the way it's being added is also completely unrealistic. So all we have to do is just look at one of the accounts that was providing those likes. This is typical, as you can guess now, because there's 11,000 of those likes, there's literally tens of thousands of accounts like this. We chose one which was clearly had all the hallmarks of a bot. So just quickly, 14,000 likes by this Yosef. No followers, no banner, no bio picture, all big red flags of bot activity. 100% retweets, another red flag. And then this very high ratio between likes and tweets, which is not a human trait, unfortunately. Humans tend to be quite stingy with likes to tweets, but these bots, and we've covered in other episodes, are designed really only for providing likes. There's different bots do different things, but this is a like bot, so it produces a very high number of likes per tweet. So this immediately meets 5 out of 6 of our bot criteria, so we have high confidence in calling this a bot. I think anyone looking at this would realize without a degree in computer science that this is a bot, and the behavior here is just not human, essentially. And you don't need a degree in physics to see that. And these accounts just appear over and over and over again in the likes and retweets of Mr. Melville. So I'm calling this rehashing an existing message which is a month old to generate 11,000 likes. I'm calling that fake. Absolutely fake. And then we can do another exercise that we've spoken about before, which is the benchmarking, where you just compare across sort of different groups, MPs, journalists, whatever, and see how much social media, Twitter traffic they generate per tweet. This is likes per tweet, and these are important people down here. Here's a very good independent researcher in proportion. He's been knocked out of Twitter once already with a very high following and has had to start again. And I'm sure he's shadow banned, and he's getting very few likes per tweet. And then James Delingpole, Professor Fenton, Alison Pearson, Vanessa Beeley is a separate subject but a very high quality independent journalist. Toby Young, of course, well known. Luke Johnson, who actually stood up in the beginning of lockdown and actually opposed the lockdown at the time when James Melville was calling for New Zealand-style lockdown in the UK. And these are the likes per tweet. I mean, the highest ones are about 400. And as far as I can see, this is all genuine figures, but every account, including ours, gets a little bit of bot amplification and algorithm amplification here and there. But more or less, these ones are genuine, and as I said, this one is actually penalized by Twitter, so it's pushed down negative. And then you compare that now with what the number of likes are per tweet for James Melville, for example. So this was actually an August position where 600, it wasn't too bad, roughly about the 600 level likes per tweet, and I've just updated it, that's why there's 2 as James Melville 2. This is now 1,500. Now what you're basically being asked to believe is more people like a single tweet from James Melville, which is often plagiarized, and it's just a rehash of something that's a month old. So you'll have 1,500 people on average liking that, which is more than all of the people liking all of the original insightful output from all of these accounts added together. I mean, to me, that's not even remotely credible, and I'm calling foul on this. And I've also added in Bernie Spoforth, which is another very high volume account, also just rehashing old material and also hitting up about 1,000 likes per tweet, many-fold higher than actual investigative journalists, professors, independent researchers, independent journalists. It just really just doesn't look credible. And Matt Gubber is another one. He's well into the 1,500 likes per tweet. And let's just translate that quickly into volumes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we also have to adjust for the fact that Mr. Melville is actually tweeting very, very rapidly at the moment. So as well as having a very high number of likes per tweet, you also have a very high volume of tweets. So that chart that you saw with the line actually gets amplified again when you start looking at weekly volumes. But it's roughly the same kind of picture. But as I said, the volume actually means that the volume is actually way higher than all of these again added together. I mean, you just look at the size of that bar compared to all of these, and you just have to make a decision based on the evidence we've produced. Is that credible or not? Clearly, we've said no, it isn't, and we continue to say that. Here is, for example, just a sample. We showed you that other one picture, but here is what we actually do and how we determine this stuff isn't realistic. Here's a screen grab, 4,700 likes. We did a screen grab pretty well in a random place of 7 of the accounts providing those likes. Ran them through the bot criteria, and anything over 4 is a bot, and there's different degrees of certainty, but all of them 100% were bots of the screenshot of 7 that we took. Now, there will be some genuine people in this like count, but I don't think it's going to be too many. And certainly in this sample, we can't do all 4,700. It'd take too long using the system we have. But based on a more or less a random sample screenshot, put it through the system, 100% bots. And this is why I don't believe any of those figures. And I believe that this really explains why there's such an enormous disconnect between those accounts on the right that we claim are amplified and the genuine volume seen for sort of Alison Pearson, Toby Young, James Delingpole, etc. And just sort of wrapping up then the social media section. This is roughly what we spoke about this before, that there's left-wing bots that we looked at earlier in another episode, and there's sort of right-leaning bots as well. And as we said on the Delingpole podcast, the guys in the background are playing with both sets of turntables here. And this is the right one, and this is the accounts that tend to get boosted. This is just one example: Jim Boy, J Bones, no bio picture, no banner, almost no followers, even though provided 39.9 thousand likes, almost all retweets. So classic signs of bot activity, and this is the accounts that this particular bot is amplifying. And the important thing here is, we've said this before, that you always mix the sort of credible people in with the not credible people. So it's no good having a bot who's just doing an obvious amplification job. You will always mix in sort of good, bad, and ugly, and give a disproportionate share to the ones that you want to amplify at any one time. So there's several accounts here that always appear in these amplification processes. And one I'd like to say a few words on is GB News, and I just thinking this morning about why that could be. And the reason really is that GB News is a very, very high tweeter. It's 1,400 a week, because they do little segments of their shows that so they can send out one segment in 5 or 6 or 7 different formats. So if they don't have any likes per tweet because they got so many tweets, or they got 1 or 2 or 3, it could be embarrassing. So I'm thinking GB News needs roughly about 250,000 tweets or likes a week to sort of match its 1,400 tweets a week output. So there's a very heavy demand for likes in GB News, and I'm thinking that could well be why they seem to turn up quite often in these bot accounts. But these are the usual suspects here basically, and as I said, you're mixing in obviously very high caliber, real genuine dissent and libertarian movement with maybe less high caliber dissent movement. That's probably all I can say about that. And then just closing off, we always like to look at the CV of people as well, and Mr. Melville's career is at the managing director of East Point West, which is what he advertises as his occupation, as well as being at Al Jazeera and Bylight Times. And it's a communication consultancy, and if you look at the website of that communication consultancy, you get no communication because you get a deceptive website ahead, which is pretty unusual to be in the communication business and actually be unable to communicate with this agency. So that's already quite surprising. We also did a quick look through Companies House, which is pretty easy to do. So that company, East Point West Limited, has done nothing for the past 10 years. Ever since it was set up, it's been dormant, according to Companies House. These are all null accounts, so that's another question mark. You know, what does this mean, managing a company that's completely dormant? That's kind of an interesting role. So that's just another question mark for us, really. So really just bringing home, as I said, it's not this, I don't want to get into a personal fight with an individual. I don't think that's very useful. And I want to go on the next slide and show what are the big implications of what we're looking at. And, you know, just providing an explanation for what we've run through today, you know, you could explain this by the X factor. Guy's got a lot of charisma, presentable guy. Maybe that's all it takes to get 1,500 likes on a sort of rehash retweet. And actually, those are not bots. Those are just people who are sort of obsessively, compulsively sitting there liking while having no followers and no biopic. But you know, you can take a call on that. I don't have the absolute truth. I've made a judgment call, but who knows? There's another explanation, which is just to buy volumes of bots. They're relatively cheap. I don't remember the exact number, but they're freely available through these slightly grey websites. You can buy them, and then that's considered an investment which you recover through sort of commercial activity somewhere else. That's very much a possibility. The other one is Twitter is just enabling traffic, and that's certainly the case. I mean, I've been looking, we had a couple of viral tweets now which we sort of punched the air on, but looking back, a lot of that is bot generated. So to my mind, it's pretty clear that Twitter is fiddling with the variable rewards, which is the thing that is psychologically addictive. So if you don't know what if you have this variable reward system, you're addicted to the system. And of course, that is their aim, to keep people on the system and addicted. And I also think they want to manufacture some social media heroes, you know, some stars of Twitter, and then those stars of Twitter that then tell other people, look, you can be a star of Twitter too, come on board. So I think Twitter itself does generate traffic, and it certainly accelerates. I think there's certainly a case for it accelerating traffic. So if a tweet gets a certain amount of traction, the bots will take it and amplify it, and again that provides the sort of dopamine hit to keep the user hooked on the system. So there's definitely some of that going on as well. But the last one I wanted to talk about is you know, where's the deep state in all this? And probably even a year ago, certainly 2 years ago, that would sound like a totally insane suggestion. But what we know now, and we did a video about this from the Grassley leaks of minutes between the Department of Homeland Security and the big tech. You know, what we know now is that those things are joined at the hip, and the more we understand about it, we understand it's really one body. So my proposition is we have the receipts to show that the state tells big tech in weekly conference calls who and what to censor. Now, why not go the sort of next step and reverse that? I don't think the deep state tells big tech who to promote, but they obviously, somewhere along the line, they understand the messages that need to be promoted, and maybe the kind of people that need to be promoted, or at least the kind of people that need to be flooded out. That's I think an important thing, is, you know, also to understand when you're promoting one group of people, you're demoting another, and that could be just as interesting, in fact more interesting than promoting certain individuals. You're demoting others, and I think, as I said, I think that goes back to what this flooding the zone means. I never really understood it, but I'm beginning to understand really what's involved in that. So let's just have a look. I've tried to step back and say, what are the messages that I'm getting through a lot of those tweets? And as I said, the very high volume and it's sort of rehashed material. What is actually being said? And what it basically is being said is you're being screwed by the government over and over again. That's the message. They screwed this up. They did the lockdown. They printed too much money. They caused a cost of fuel crisis. They're destroying your real wages. And it goes, and then the sort of next thing is, if only we had another government. That is not the line for a libertarian argument, because I think as a libertarian you don't care too much, but it's sort of a choice between bad and worse. But as a libertarian you're actually opposed to state intervention altogether, and you're for personal liberty. The party political thing for us is just a blind alley which we don't want to go down. But I think the messages I'm getting here are, the government screwed you, if only we had a better government, and then you're off into party politics. So that's one thing which I think is a bit of a diversion. And as I said just previously, that there's not much constructive comment in all of that. You're being screwed over kind of stuff. And that also takes the oxygen out of much more constructive messages, where you have, for example, the Heritage Party that says, hey, you're being screwed over, but by the way, we're fielding candidates in more or less every constituency in the UK, and here's a political way to express that frustration, actually create pressure to get things to be fixed. And I'd never really seen, I don't think, anything of the Heritage Party or David Curtin ever being amplified. So again, he's being relatively demoted by having other people pushed up. Reclaim I don't see too much of, but oddly enough they did appear once in various things. And then other important voices who are not being boosted, you could name whichever ones you find most interesting, they get then relatively demoted, and I'm sure that's quite a big part of this thing. And then the last thing is, and for a lot of reasons I'm beginning to think about this, is that there's a clear sort of list of steps for a regime change and transitioning into totalitarian government. One of them is overall demoralization. If you believe the sort of Bismanoff evidence, then he lays out, rightly or wrongly, a list of steps to demoralize the population leading up to a coup. And the sort of endless bombardment with problems with no solutions would be a good way to demoralize people. So who knows? That's still something we're thinking about. And as I said before, we're going to get some applied psychologists in and trying to make a bit more sense of these messages. But, rest assured, there is method in the madness. You have to ask, why are certain individuals and certain messages being amplified? In my guess, there's almost always an explanation. Now, as I said, some of them can be commercial, some of them can be, just genuine, the real deal, but others of them can be to do with this sort of state big tech merger and the state pushing various applied psychology buttons. And we've seen that through COVID. They have no bounds on what they're prepared to do or not do through the Spy B and the nudge unit. So why not be carrying out a psyop on the population through Twitter? I really think that to some extent is an explanation, and we're still speculating about what really is going on there. So I think that was it for today. We're going to put in actually even not only the methodology notes into this section of the website, but we'll probably download a couple of the spreadsheets, and you can see those benchmarks of likes to tweets, so you can decide for yourself. Really, it's fully transparent. There's no hidden sort of black box involved. So that'll all be posted. You can look at the site and have a look, see what you think. We don't mind either way. It's up to people to decide. And as I said before, at the end of each show, please stay free. Don't stay safe, and please look us up on Patreon if you can. And there is also a page on the website about volunteering. We have now really a super group of people who have come forward, amazing skill sets. So I really hope we can get some traction with that and do some interesting stuff in 2022 and try and keep the flames of liberty burning. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.